Hey guys, Chris here with Work to Game, and today I'd like to talk about conglomerates. Forza came out this week, and honestly, it looks like based on the reviews that I won't be getting it because they have pushed the revenue model so far in one direction that it looks like your $60 buy-in is just enabling you to have the right to give them more money down the line. Now this is a trend we've seen in gaming. Brian and I have talked about it here on the channel before, and so that really isn't totally my issue. We went over it a bit in our What Do Games Cost, but what does that mean? Does it mean that only big companies can afford to take big risks? And if so, are conglomerates good for gaming? In the early 2000s, we saw EA make huge strides in the number of companies they acquired, and we saw them treat their employees badly, we saw their quality of products dip way down, and ultimately, eventually they owed it to their shareholders to actually act a little bit like better people. And so they've really had to climb over the last decade to think about, what does the public think about us? What do our employees think about us? And ultimately, what kind of games are we producing? Because the market will turn, and yes, you'll have some very profitable quarters in the short term, but ultimately you're not building any brand loyalty, and we get nervous when you own franchises that we do love. There's a Need for Speed game coming out next month, and I hope it's good, but EA is always one of those companies that you get really nervous about. They owned Activision from like 2007 to 2013, and so there's a significant window in there where a lot of people who don't like Blizzard games probably just don't like some of the decisions that EA was making, especially early on in that merger when they were trying to put a lot of creative force. But I guess the really big question is, are conglomerates good for gaming? Small studios occasionally come out with something very big, very lovable. This is especially common in genres like indies, but when it comes to MMOs, when it comes to first-person shooters, racing games, where you require just such a high level of precision and such a high level of just content available at launch, even big companies often have day one patches. And so it's hard to picture a small studio with just a handful of people really being able to get the amount of testing necessary that we come to expect out of companies like Square Enix or Activision. And so the alternative side of that is, well, does it take big backing? You look at, No Man's Sky, well, Sony backed them, and that's what gave everybody such confidence that it was going to be this great product. And then it turned out Sony really just backed them. They didn't do, they kind of let them be them, and that's why maybe the game got a little more hype than it deserved. It got, AAA hype, and it actually was probably a very good game below that AAA standard, at least at launch. And so, what do you expect? Well, I expect a game, when it has lots of backing, to have at least 100 hours worth of quality content, some form of replayability, a decent amount of cinematics, and these are expensive things. And so as monetary models shift, and as we start to see games that are almost free to play with a $60 entry fee, the question becomes, does a bigger company give them more ability to do that? And if so, I think conglomerates are good for gaming. I think that being owned by Microsoft has given companies the ability to come out with very large, very successful titles. The other side of that is, what are they going to want in return, right? You're kind of making a deal with the devil. And so as good as the intentions may be of, Microsoft, could Halo have been better outside of that influence? I don't know. Could Gears of War have been better outside of that influence? I don't know. And if the game could be better, what if it's at the risk that it never existed at all? The number of studios that EA has owned over the years is ridiculous. And those are studios that may not have been able to make it through times where maybe a game wasn't set to release till next year, but the economy's gotten tight. And so maybe some of their current merchandise or wherever they're getting their investors or anything like that have gotten very slim, and they wouldn't have made it to launch day. And so I do appreciate EA for the number of titles we've had brought to market. But the other side of that is, I've seen them pollute the Call of Duty series, their sports franchises, and all this to, it's just been simplified down to sometimes just this annual, we're going to re-release the same thing to take more of your money. So I don't know how I feel. And really, I think that's why this kind of hit me today, because I saw the news that Ubisoft is buying back 4 million shares of their own stuff to prevent the ability to be taken over. It is absolutely crazy to me that a company that is worth billions of dollars has to buy back hundreds of millions of dollars of their own shares to take that back, because that's more of something I think of taking place in the oil industry or in, retail markets or things like that. But it makes sense as gaming starts to get money in it. It's a lot like YouTube. Over the last several years, we've started to see more YouTube drama pop up and lawsuits and things like that. But really, it's just that it's finally gotten worth it to sue. There wasn't enough money on the platform before. And so as gaming becomes this big billion-dollar industry, we're going to see some changes. And it's our job as consumers and as the gamers themselves to be able to know what it is we want to see this industry become, so that when something steers away from that, we can make sure we don't buy it. I want to play Forza 7. I will not be purchasing it until it's on sale, maybe not ever, because of the monetary model that they've decided to push on the game. And so that's just a decision that I have to make. And if that game sells really poorly, maybe it'll teach them, don't do that again. I'm hoping EA comes out with a much better model for Need for Speed next month, so that I'm not just stuck without a good racing game right now. But if so, then that's what it is. And so what is it that you want the industry to become? What is it that you picture this industry being? And how does it serve you? And how do you, as a consumer, put your money somewhere that matters? I think that it's great. I think that the shareholders thought it was great that Ubisoft's buying all that back. It's the reason that you see a lot of these small studios just never want to go that public in the first place, if at all. But do you think that we would have some of the greatest titles that we have today without big companies backing them? Companies like Nintendo that notoriously back good games in-house, if those all had to come out of small independent studios separate from the platform, separate from the backing of Nintendo itself, because Nintendo didn't develop its own games, would whatever split off to take over Zelda when that kind of shift took place have given us Breath of the Wild? So it's just kind of something that I was thinking about today. I hope you guys are having a fantastic week. Thank you so much for hanging out. My name's Chris. This is Work to Game, and we'll see you next time.
Hey, it's me. Thanks so much for watching this video. You should click over here to see more videos just like it, or you should click down here to check out our recent vlog. But you can also click somewhere down here below to hit the subscribe button, as well as check out our other info. Again, thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye.